Okay, greetings everybody. Make sure everything's running here. And if you want to join the panel, the link is posted. So please feel free to hit that and join me on panel. What we're doing today is reviewing a video that I already did. So screw YouTube and copyright and all that. I'm reviewing my own material. So let's go over a video I did on selective service and the fallacy that people think that it's required because they say it is in one sense and then turn around and in the code, in plain writing, it says something totally different. We're going to see that. Again, we're talking about things that you can read and comprehend simply by the words they're using as being very succinct. So first of all, let me check everybody out. Tell everybody thanks for joining me. Cult member number 99, Toilet Scrubber, Cult Slave Master 07, Cult members 711 Medic, Chris, Cult member 222, thank you. Be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe. There is a PayPal link up there at the moment. I will post that every here and there. Please feel free to hit that and share some love. This is all I do, and I depend on donations to help me out. So it's always appreciated. And with that, let's see if we can't get into it. Again, remember the panel link is up there, so feel free to hit that and join me. I would love it, and I always need it. Okay. And this is a video I did, let's see here. Yeah. Okay. It's catching up here. And this was done 11 months ago, so almost a year ago, and it's got 313 views. And it's pretty saddening because this is pertinent information that if it's not put out there by sharing it, then who's going to learn it? And how are they going to relieve themselves and their future generations from this, quote, selective service and some kind of supposed draft? So let's take a look at this and get her started, and I'll check all the panels and everything while I'm getting her started. I want to get on and talk to everybody about the selective service and what it is, how it works in relations to the welfare program and this and that. And it's only going to be brief, I think, because this is the first time I've looked at this selective service registration code itself. And so I've never actually looked at it in depth. So I might find some stuff here that might relate to other information I've already researched or correlate with research that I should be doing as well. So we're going to take a look at that. Okay. This is, obviously, we're looking at 34 CFR 668.37 selective service registration. Now, when we look at this, we see it's the Education Department and regulations of the offices of offices. So it is an official office of a military service. That's where the offices sit. It's a provisional government by a military service and operates under martial law, and the political offices they're under are all offices of the same thing, whether it be an office of the Department of Education, Homeland Security, Administration, Accountability, Management and Budget, whatever. It's still military. Every last bit of it is military. Office of post-secondary. Post. Office of Post. Secondary Education. All roads are postal roads. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 7. It's not primary education of the post. Get it? But it's Office of Post, Secondary Education, Department of Education. This is all public. It's not private education of posting. Of post. What is a post? And like I've said before, everywhere you go, you're posting shit to somebody's record. And you've only got a secondary education to a primary record. Okay, so let's take a look at it. A, to be or not to be. That is the question. It says selective. Okay? Once you elect to be part of the service, then you get a selection. As being enrolled in education, Mom and Dad elected to put you up for selective service registration. Boys. To be eligible to receive Title IV. One thing to note, we have this thing about transgender going on, and you young ladies out there preferring to be a boy, you're going to fall to the same trap if you're not paying attention. So again, mothers and fathers, moms and dads, make sure you're passing this on. See, now you have the notice of the knowledge. You now have a duty to pass it on. If you wish to feed your children a fish every day, you may do so. But I strongly suggest that you teach them how to fish and teach them the principle that once they've learned how to fish, they too now have that duty to pass it on. And higher education program funds, a male student who is subject to registration with selective service must register with selective service. Okay? So you notice it says to be eligible to receive Title IV and HEA, which is higher education. Higher education assistance. Title IV is the insurance. That's your Title IV-D in the contracts in the family courts. Okay? So if you're going to partake of that system, then you're required to register. But what happens is mom and dad at the enumeration of birth put in a document that says that one day you're going to be an eligible male. And I hope you pay attention because, see, they say that the eligible male is between the ages of 18 and 15 or 18 and 50, and we're going to find out different. We're going to find out that if it comes to an actual war, they're going to pull the young males out of school all the way down to the age of 14. Because in the public education system, a male student at the age of 14 becomes a volunteer. Without him even knowing. No one in the public education system tells anybody about this. You have to read it in their code. So it is disclosed somewhere, but it's not actually disclosed to each individual. Therefore, voiding and evading govern of the consent. That tells us males or females benefit from the Title IV-D and the higher education program funds. So ladies, I want to ask you, just like food stamps and everything, why are you not getting education free? Is it because they're telling you, well, it's going to cost you this, this, and this, when in fact a higher education program funds it? through welfare, which is for the benefit of mothers and children, and never once mentions the dad except in taking charge over a child of which either parent objects.
That's your family court, guys.
So if a male student objects, and the only reason they would have this for moms and children is if the male student wasn't around. So I want everybody to think about this, because it's...
And remember, I said male student. That's what it reads, a male student. So if once you graduate, and it's only then that you're required to register, then why are they speaking of a male student? Shouldn't they be saying the young adult who graduated from school? See, it's all wrong. And when you realize what's going on, again, like I said, that 14-year-old male is a volunteer, so that if a war comes to this land, they will yank him out of school, put him and his dad, since he's only 14 and his dad is likely under 15, will likely put them both in the military by force, and leaving the women and children behind to work in the factories and do all that shit. This is what war does to the family, and they want it. They don't want the family to be settled.
Still a selective service. You always have the ability to back out and say, I'm sorry, I made a bad choice. I found a better way. I found a better path. I found a higher education for myself, so my woman and my children wouldn't have to depend on yours through a secondary education program, which is still, and that's what their higher education is. It's still a secondary program. Think about this, people. All these creditors, accountants, attorneys, bankers, a lot of this information that we're putting out, they have never heard of, even though they went to 2, 4, 6, 8 years of college. I guarantee you that doctor that took a Hippocratic oath, I can completely prove he is incompetent on the stand by questioning an English major, and why such an idiot who professes that he understands English would take an oath to God and to Apollo and the Greek gods.
You guys comprehend that? That's the enumeration at birth done by a doctor that works at a hospital, and that doctor at the hospital takes a Hippocratic oath to Apollo and the Greek gods. These are the emotions. And then on the United States side, that oath is under the God that is known under the King James version of the Bible, 1611, known to be the law of the land. So what they do is they take it out of the law of the land and put it in the law of the emotions. And that's all those colorful languages that everybody wants to use when they start swearing and cussing because they get mad or emotional and all this. That's the beginning of the indoctrination. And mom and dad, through the emotional portion of the bringing forth a legacy heir, they forget all about the necessities of life, because they're no longer under a threat. They've been living in this cultivated indoctrination through their propaganda of the public education system, which they take upon convenience. They themselves went through that same indoctrination. And so when mom goes to that hospital, she doesn't know the better that she's being in a spell of illness. I don't call it a spell of illness. I call it doing the good works of his labor. That's what the labor pains are all about. It's not about delivery.
Yeah, please. Just set it on the stove. Comprehend that, folks. You want to put me to a competency test? Why did that doctor take a Hippocratic oath to God, Apollo and the Greek gods? No, not the one that's questioning me about my competency, but I'm questioning my mom's competency and this whole fucking record and its ability to question my competency first.
See, the error is in the record. It's not in me or anybody else. We've been putting those errors in the record, so it's up to me and everybody else to be competent to remove them. They don't want to do that. They think they belong there. No, you're not understanding. I'm the one that gave those data elements. That's my private information. That's protected under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8. Treaty of Berne, literary and artistic works. My signature is artistic and it's known to be relevant to myself and no one else because of its style. Because as far as I know, that's tampering with a witness, an informant, unlawfully converting and instrumentalizing a deceptive language. Pure and simple. So it goes on to say, a male student does not have to register with the Selective Service if the student is below age of 18 or was born before January 1st, 1960. I think they need to update that. See, this is one of those points that I like to make because it shows an inconsistency on the record. Think about this, guys. If somebody's born before January 1st, 1960, that means that motherfucker got to be at least 73 years old at this point in time. We are talking about now time in its correct, accurate correlation. Okay? Plain language. In plain language, this is aired. Is enrolled in an officer procurement program. The curriculum. Officer procurement program. Did you enroll your children in an officer procurement program, the curriculum of which has been approved by the Secretary of Defense after you registered their birth with the Secretary of Defense through the Department of Defense birth registration, which is only an agreement between the federal government and an official of the state to assign a social security number to a newborn child who has already proven that they are taking charge over of a child over parents at all, because neither parent has made an objection first, including the mom, the informant? Because it was born in a spell of illness. That spell of illness is that it's illicit. I see it in the spelling. Behave. Really? If you take those two words and you separate them, it's be, have. So why are we babbling with behave? Because somebody else contracted two words and put them together. That's a contraction. That's known as contracting. Bunch of babblers out there contracting and don't even know it, and it's right before their eyes. Because they don't have eyes to see or ears to hear the differences, the variances. The Citadel, Secretary of Defense Act. This tells you where the Virginia Military Institute, Lexington, Virginia. Norwich University. That's a college, North Georgia College. The Citadel, same situation. These are granted organizations. These are land grants. These are land grant colleges. This is a land grant institution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Needful places and buildings, not people. Possession, entry, and ejection from lands is a military operation. Is a commissioned officer of the Public Health Service. Is that telling you that the military is, or the health service is the Public Health Service is a military branch? You guys better start thinking about this. I've been telling you, when you sign up for that Social Security Administration and they automatically attach that selective service number, that should tell you it's a military operation, and it's Social Security Administration. 32 CFR 1602.4 area office. The selective service is responsible for administrations and operations in the area of under the jurisdiction of the board. Resident. The only persons allowed to reside within the zone are federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. So what is necessary? Were you deemed necessary, or did you just go up there and volunteer in exchange for Title IV and higher education assistance? Because if that wasn't your intent, and your intent was because you thought you had to under threats, duress, and coercion, that if you didn't, they were going to put you in the gulag under a military flag when you weren't even in the military yet. The fuck is that? Fucking wake up. Telling you, when you get that assigned Social Security number to the newborn child, you just entered them into a commissioned office of a military public health service. You elected as mom and dad to do so. And then you turned around and continued that with enrollment for curriculum to train him for public procurement. That public procurement, that's the same thing as acquisitioning. When you procure something, you're obtaining it. So when you obtain it under these rules, it's called the Federal Acquisitions Regulations. And under 52.212-5, it says, and I quote, contract terms and conditions required to implement statutes or executive orders - commercial products or commercial services. So if it's private and it's not of commerce, then there is no acquisitioning. So all of these things with all of these receipts, those are nothing but transactions. Tax Stamp Duty Act. If it's a government document, it's supposed to have a transfer stamp on it to qualify the transfer. Everybody's doing these transactions, and that's just a passing of credits that's then turned around as if though they're going to come back and get you if you fall into debt and don't pay that credit. Then they're going to transfer your property. That's unlawful. The first thing you're supposed to do is transfer property in trust in equal consideration for the contract. If that doesn't happen first, then the contract cannot be had. Once you pay those or put those assets into a holding, there's documents that are made, and then you make pay the taxes. Then you can start the actual contract. If you guys don't understand this and you're just out there willingly, wantonly signing those government documents and not placing the stamp on there and signing it and dating it, then you are not in control. They are, and they'll never give you that secret. Never. You have to dig through their information for at least 7 years like me. Bunch of lazy motherfuckers. That's what the public education is so convenient for. That way you don't have to pick up another book after you graduate. Or a member of the reserve of the Public Health Service. Again, telling you it's a military operation who is on active duty. Mom and Dad, are you on active duty? Mom sure as hell is. She's in labor. Now, wait a minute. Why does it say on active duty? Remember UCC 3-402? If they're on active duty versus in labor, there's a very distinct difference. They converted what was in to something that was on. That's their doing, and it's false. Mom, were you on active duty
when you were bearing labor pains, doing his good works?
The armorial bearings.
After one of his children was founded in your kiln, your womb, and you were entrusted with that product of life for 9 months? Dad, did you seed that? Were you co-trustee in that? Being cast upon the earth and not being part of the military. They tampered with witnesses.
And that is a valid statement. They tampered with the witness of the record itself. Like I said, on active duty versus in labor. That is a doing that was converted to a writing of intellectual and intangible thinking that is done in comments and therefore is an invention, fabrication, and fiction. This is provable because the language is specific. Plain Writing Act. Like I said, that's 5 USC 301, wherein they have the minimum birth registrations and the Plain Writing Act, and it's applicable to the Department of Defense. And then you'll notice down in the details section here on this video, there's a link on this stream video that leads to the General Education Provisions Act video in which I did. Public education, it's the wrong route. You shouldn't be entering into that public education. Ramon, you've got a kindergarten registration. Welcome aboard. And what we're talking about here is that registration is into a military education system. And they're going to train that child for military remembering to take orders. That's all you're doing. You're taking orders that somebody else is writing and drafting up. And that's a commercial term. They're writing up, drafting orders, and then you accept it through that registration as an order. No, it's not an order. It's an offer. Offer and acceptance in formation of contract. That's what the information is on that document. It's information of contract. So in the chat, the details down below on this video, Ramon, you're going to find that link, and it's got a 2-hour video on General Education Provisions Act. And in there, you're going to find out that they reference 50 USC 4305. And that's the one I talk about in regards to Trading with the Enemy Act for full acquittance and discharge, so that no person shall be held liable in any court. You folks that want to homeschool your children, 50 USC 4305 under the General Education Provisions Act. You direct the full acquittance and discharge and tell them you will spiritually guide your children. And that is a matter of process of knowing and not believing and remembering. We are an homage back to our Father, and that is a matter of knowing. It's very particular that people get back to the spiritual and get rid of this manual BS.
So this is actually kind of, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I guess this is kind of personal here, right? Because, and I understand that the whole implication behind it. My wife and I don't see eye to eye on the homeschooling. Obviously, I want it to happen, but she doesn't. She doesn't really. I don't think that she trusts her ability to provide the education, and
Well,
which is kind of sad.
I think the bigger question is she willing to accept the responsibility? Because, like I said, when I realized I had reached my freedom, what actually happened was I wasn't quite as free as I thought I was, or I wasn't free the way I thought I would be. Because when I hit that point, I realized I've got a lot more responsibility, and I can't shirk it because I made that fucking inward promise that I've got to be the man I was meant to be. And that means I can't go by my will. I've got to go by his will, and I've got to start taking his instruction and no one else's.
That was my problem, was I took the instruction from that public education system and everybody else that was indoctrinated by it. And once I realized everybody in my life was lying to me, I said, fuck them all.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm completely on board with this process. There's only so much that I can do. The cognitive dissonance is unreal.
It is.
I just to stay on topic here with the, because I was just recently at the DMV. We were talking on Paul's um, uh, panel, well, in his messaging part. But anyway, this kindergarten form here, I might as well just show you. Um, Let me see if I can flip my camera. No, I don't think I can here. Maybe if I do it like that. So there's the form, right? Registration, we already know what that means, commercial term. And then this form right here, I thought I could flip it, but I can't. It says, thank you for registering your child for kindergarten. Here is some basic information to share with you. Birth certificates and the kindergarten physicals will be required before your child may begin school. What do they need the birth certificate for?
Exactly. Because it's a commercial process. They need to tap into that account. And they need your authorization to do so. So they want that signature. Well, then they're going to turn around and tell you got to pay all these school funds and everything. And if the kid has to go to the hospital and this and that, whatever, they're going to start tacking charges on, because that's a contract. And if you don't relieve all liability, that's what that 50 USC 4305 is. You're releasing all liability by giving them a directive that you're not going to take upon the convenience of them providing a military education. You're a spiritual being, and you're going to spiritually guide your child as a pass-through for the will of our Father. And that's what can't be impeded.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense, having the birth certificate for commercial purposes for the military. That's kind of sick, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaking sick.
Well, like I said in this video here that we're reviewing, it's under 5 USC 301, the minimum birth registration requirements, along with the plain writing law, and it clearly says that it's applicable to the Department of Defense. And then, as we saw, it's not really a requirement. It's if you are eligible if you wish to take upon the Title IV insurance and the higher education assistance, and it's only for males. And as we go on further, you're going to see that male part starts at the age of 14 and not 18. At the age of 14, they declare that the male in the as a male student in the public education system, they become a volunteer, whether they know it or not. That's what their writing says. And that's the fallacy of it. It's all a volunteer system. Well, the resident presence deemed necessary is a contradiction to that. So is it a volunteer or is it of necessity? See? They've got a big problem. Were you deemed a resident? Did you do that? Did they infer it? Did they imply it? Did they assume it? Presume it? Because it's never been necessitated. If you had, it would have been before the Secretary of Commerce as the executive chair and the Secretary of Treasury. If that's never occurred, then it's not valid, and therefore it's never been true.
But here's a process that they go through, because this happened to me last year when I had registered my my first one. Was they started sending me threatening letters, communications. I know that I could have gone and tried to seek remedy out of these situations. Ultimately, they never followed through with it, thank God, because of course the court process can be egregious. But anyway, so they started sending me threatening letters. Hey, you're required for your son is required to have all these immunizations, and I told them no. I said, my son will not be getting any of these COVID vaccinations. He's not going to be receiving any immunizations. So then it was a battle. What they had goofed up, because the nurse had already looked at my son's records and showed that some of them were already done when he was first born. and I never gave them permission to do so. So then she shared that private information with the secretary. She shared that private information then also with the who's the guy that sits on top of the I forgot what his position is. He's like the head honcho of the building, and so
Well,
he's the one that was sending me threatening letters. And then I just backed off and I told him like, look, my son has God-given inherent rights, and I am here, as his representative to tell you guys that you guys will not be impeding on any of his God-given rights.
yeah,
And
that's the son of God, and I'm the pass through for His will to protect him. That's my ultimate duty. My ultimate duty. Your ultimate duty is to educate him, not unless I say so.
so then they're like, if you don't do what we tell you, we're going to report you to the Department of Health and Human Services and get the child care stuff involved. And I said, well, that actually kind of sounds like you're acting under the color
Yeah, that's threats of
law as well.
That's threatening
Because
to
it
use
was
a legal system against you. And I'll pull that one up sometime for you too.
That's right. Yeah.
It's right in their
And it
code.
was
They
just
can't
really
do
sick.
it.
Now they had backed completely off. I don't know if it was God's will or if they just thought that this sovereign is just too dumb to understand, so we'll just let him pass through, whatever.
Yeah.
So now it looks like I'm gonna have to face this again because I thought I read somewhere. I'm gonna have to look again that birth certificates are meant to identify along
Yeah.
with the social security number.
Yeah. And the rebuttal is Jeremiah 1:5. Before I
Jeremiah.
formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou
That's
was
right.
cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. In that birth registration, they're conferring a nationality. I'm sorry, but my child was born unto the nations as a prophet. In order for him to get the right word, I have to teach him myself spiritually as a prophet myself. What you've done is conferred a nationality upon everybody that does not apply. I'm not part of your military of defense or your Department of Defense. It does not apply. So anyway, let's get back to it real quick.
Thank you, sir.
And like I said, that link for the other video is down there in the detail section below.
Okay. I'll definitely go through and watch that as well.
Can't prove otherwise. None of their documents are scriptural. None. Not one. None. When the secretary processes a male student's FAFSA, the secretary determines whether the student is registered with the Selective Service under a data match with the Selective Service.
So, despite the fact that that male student didn't request Title IV and higher education assistance, the Selective Service member that's administrating at that school is the one that makes the determination, and that's how they get away with it. Same with student loans. When you're on one side of the counter and you're filling out that paperwork, you're just putting data elements in it, and then the other person on the other side of the counter does the administration and gets credit for that.
Everything's entered into the Selective Service records, moms and dads. Moms who bear children to females, little girls.
That's because when you register them at school, you give them a social security number and a birth date. That birth date is not the birth date, is it? That's the day that little thing was born.
That's correct. Life was given at the zygote. Sorry.
Right. And when that child was, and that's that prenatal record. So they're developing the person, the man first. The man exists before that little thing is born. The prenatal record is the person. And everybody's developing that person before that little thing comes out.
that person as a man. Now, once that little thing comes out and is discharged of his mother's waters, and man becomes a living soul when he takes the breath of life upon God, who created him from the dust of the ground and mixed him with his mother's waters. Now he has all three elements. Once he comes out and takes that first breath, the man is no longer supposed to give up that record. Place a memorial in front of him and say, this is one of the children of Israel. There will be no more merchandising. I was only here for help and assistance myself. I was not here in a spell of illness. I was doing his good works in labor.
Even though you're not in the military, Dad's not there. And it's assumed.
How many of you women have children? How many of them was the dad there? How many of them did Dad catch that baby? How many of them were at home, maybe in a tub or a pool? How many of you let that baby swim around in that water for a while first, before he took his first breath? How many of you let the placenta on and let it beat out until at least 30, 45 minutes, so he got a good supply of boost of nutrients as he was expelled from the womb and came upon this atrocious world? Started offending all of his senses. It's very shocking, I'm sure.
That Dad is lost at sea, and the state is going to help take care of the welfare of Mom and the child. If Mom and Dad simply step up, say no thanks, that's not the way it is, and that's not the way it can be, because we are not with the Selective Service ourselves, then I'm sorry. We can't just, you can't just sign us up. See, by signing up for that welfare, that SS5 application at the age of 18, guys and ladies, you're stating that you're part of the military, when that's not so. Moms and dads, when you have children and you enter them in that birth registration, you're saying you're part of the military. And if that's not so, that record can't be made. It's a false data entry. Under the data match, Selective Service reports to the Secretary whether its records indicate that a student is registered. That's all it does. It doesn't prove anything. It only indicates.
And that is because, again, if that birth certificate were actually certified properly, it would have a handwritten statement from Mom or Dad of their intent to enter those data elements to create that legal entity. Somebody just mentioned it in the comments section. BORNE. The Bible warns us of that. That is the creation of a legal entity. I'd like to remind you to go back and maybe watch the series of Born Entity. Jason Bourne. Son. Born.
It's indicative. It is not proof. It is evidence in, on, and for the record that certain transfers and transactions have been committed, but the information is never verified. Never. If it were, they would find that it's false. This is why I pose that all you got to do is correct the record. That the student
correcting the record by declassification form 715. The classifications from the beginning are military. Like I said, that hospital is a military hospital. That legal entity is a military entity. And it was all done under military classification. And there's a variance from categorical pre-treatment standards for variances in fundamental differences of nature. Their classification, 7 USC 136. Animal includes man. So I ask again, can you license an animal? Can you register an animal for the military? Can an animal operate a motor vehicle? Can an animal drive? These are all questions relating to the relative terms that they use in their commercial system that says if you don't know what the fuck you're doing and you're out there babbling, you're nothing but one of them whores.
Student is registered and the secretary reports the results of the data match, not the actual scrutiny of a record, but just the results of what's indicative to the student and the institution the student is attending. If the selected service does not confirm through the data match that the student is registered, the student can establish that he is registered, is not, or was not required to be registered. Correction of the records. I'm sorry. As I find in the records, mom and dad, the informant, mom as an informant couldn't be part of the military. Somebody tampered with a witness. Fact on the record. Has registered since the submission of FAFSA. Meets the conditions of paragraph D of this section, which says an institution may determine that a student who was required to, but did not register with selective, is not ineligible to receive Title IV and higher education assistance for that reason. Is not ineligible. In other words, they're admitting that you are eligible, guys, to receive Title IV and higher education assistance. For that reason.
Are you paying attention? So in other words, if you get Title IV and higher education assistance, or one or the other, you're part of the selective service system by their choice. Then they say you're eligible for Title IV and higher education assistance, but you got to apply for these loans and you got to pay subpays and this and that. The fuck is that? Is that truly a benefit? It's sickening.
Reason. If the student can demonstrate by submitting clear and unambiguous evidence to the institution that he was unable to present himself for registration for reasons beyond his control.
When in fact, it has nothing to do with that. Again, an inconsistency proving impossibilities. It's not a matter of whether he could get there or not, or register or not. It's a matter of choice. He's eligible if he wishes to take upon the Title IV and higher education assistance. If he doesn't need that assistance, then why does he need to apply? Remember, it's applicable to the Department of Defense. If you're not part of the Department of Defense already, moms and dads, by creating that legal entity, then it doesn't exist and they can't tell the 18-year-old man or the 14-year-old student that he's required and trick him, manipulate him, tempt him. Come on, brothers and sisters, tempt yourselves and believe. Fucking fools.
It's beyond my control. Isaiah 44, verse 5 says that I shall call myself by the name of Jacob and subscribe by my hand in the surname of Israel. Such as hospitalization, incarceration, or institutionalization, or he is over 26, and when he was between 18 and 26 and were required to register, he did not knowingly and willfully fail to register with the Selective Service, or what they leave out here is he did not knowingly and willingly register with the Selective Service despite not being eligible.
Again, relating back to the Title IV and higher education assistance. See, that's what they call that public education system. That's a training setup so that you can take upon the higher education assistance that mom and dad want to put you in beyond high school, which is college. tricking, manipulating, and tempting you into taking student loans so you can get a better job than the regular fucking Joe Blow.
He served as a member of one of the U.S. Armed Forces on active duty and received a DD-214, Certificate of Release of Discharge, or release or discharge from active duty.
Like I said, DD-214s operate in two ways: a release for personal services into the civil branch of the military, or a discharge from the military, and now private, no class.
Certificate of Release or Discharge. You have to complete and qualify its use. This is telling you it can be used for a release. In other words, you release your services from the military to the civil duties, civil areas, civil jurisdiction, civil services. So now you're done with the military service and you're going to release your personal services to the civil side of the record. Or discharge,
which is still a military record in whole. It's their record. It starts out military and includes the executive, legislative, and administrative. Telling us again, the military is the one that operates the judicial. And that is supposed to be a neutral and independent office.
Discharge from active duty, whereupon you go upon your own private way. They do know this stuff. You just have to be able to express it. Hey, I made a mistake. I made an act. I had all these accidents, continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions, placing public liability where I never expected or intended as the insured. See, when I took up the SS5 and became insured and started placing those liabilities on the record through continuous and repeated exposure to the same conditions of believing that I was required to, when in fact I wasn't, and what.
And again, UCC 3-402 clearly says that the authorized representative giving an unambiguous signature on the instrument is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument. A government instrumentality which is not taxable.
Was not even eligible to? I repent. I'm sorry. I did not mean to cause all this trouble. But now that I know of it and I've given notice, it's everybody's duty, because you're the ones on the civil or military side in the service still that have an active duty.
And that active duty is according to this set of codes that are codified and regulated for all administration and operation. Everything, top down.
And have not been released or discharged from that active duty. Showing military service with other than the Reserve Forces and National Guard. All you got to do is flip the script on them, guys. They tell you. This is very plain language. For the purpose of paragraph D21 or D2I of this section, an institution may consider that a student did not knowingly and willingly fail to register. They can also consider that he did not knowingly and willingly register under eligibility. He didn't realize that he wasn't eligible and therefore did register, and he didn't mean to, didn't realize it. Now that he realizes it, the record must be retracted.
See, you're not eligible for the Title IV in higher education until you register. However, the presumption is that since you already received higher education as a student in the public education system under the General Education Provisions Act, that you are required now to register. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Thanks for the convenience of all the presumptions, assumptions, and implications.
For the record must reflect accurately. In that, I apologize for my mistakes. I repent. And as a redeemer, A stranger and sojourner with our Father which art in heaven, in all of the lands of my possession I shall grant a redemption. And that's what I'm doing. That's all I wish. It's my wish because it's his will. The student submits to the institution an advisory opinion from the selective service system that does not dispute the student's claim that he did not knowingly and willingly or willfully fail to register.
And they can never do so. They always have to state that they don't know whether that student willingly or unwillingly did not register, because they're the ones that registered them. Remember? They're the ones that started putting it in the documentation while he was still a student. Yeah, while he was still a student. Said, well, Mom and Dad said he is, so yeah, it was planned out. Go with the plan. Follow the plan, folks. Uh-huh.
And this here is a statement in our verse stating the same thing, but that I registered, but I did so unknowingly and intentionally. But now that I realize I wasn't eligible at the time, I have to repent. The institution does not have uncontroverted evidence that I did so. They can't prove that I did so intentionally by knowing this stuff and was therefore going to defraud their entire system for 33 fucking years and then spend 6 years trying to figure it all out myself. They can't prove that, folks. It's because I sought a higher education outside of their education system. A student, that's what showed me that I'm not eligible to register in that system. It's a military system, and I'm a peaceful inhabitant in this world, a stranger and sojourner with him on a spiritual journey as a living soul in the embodiment of a man in image and likeness of Jesus Christ in Eucharist. A student who is required to register with the selective service. And
again, a student cannot be required to register with the selective service. A young adult man who has already graduated and wishes to take upon the benefit or the exchange for being eligible for Title IV and higher education beyond graduating high school, then he can't be required to register yet. So a student can't be required to register.
And has been denied the Title IV and higher education program assistance because he has not proven to the institution that he has registered with selective service, may seek a hearing from the secretary by filing a request in writing with the secretary. So now,
see again, it's somebody else saying that the student is required to register. And if there is no registration, because he's still a student, by doing this stuff now or at that time, they're posing that he's required to do so, and it's false. That is lying. They do it anyway. They never ask the student. They never ask the mom and dad. They just state that they're required to, when it clearly states that he has to wish to have the eligibility of the Title IV and higher education in order to then be required to register in exchange for those benefits. That's not a benefit. That's an equal consideration in exchange. That's a contract. A student cannot contract.
Now we find we're dealing with the Secretary of the Social Security Administration as far as the administrative law judges and the Secretary of the Selective Service. Okay. A statement that he is in compliance with registration requirements. So my statement would be that I went outside or entered into the bounds of registration requirements unknowingly and unintentionally, which caused harm not only to myself, but to my family,
both up and down the line. My mom and dad were indoctrinated. That's harmful. That's propaganda. Same with my children. Same with me.
My children, my companion, my biological brothers and sisters, the parents that adopted me, they call me a lunatic. It's definitely caused damage, not to myself, but to them.
Yeah, I'm all the better for it. I'm better without them trying to drag me down and keep me down at their level, believing that the police are my fucking authority. I don't bow down to anybody. Neither should you.
A concise statement of the reasons why he has not been able to prove that he is in compliance with those requirements, and copies of all material that he has already supplied, and that's not the way it's done. You issue a concise statement of the reasons why you cannot be.
To be.
I urge you to come.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Said long ago, William Shakespeare.
Come out of her. And though we can't supply copies of all material that I've already supplied to the institution, I can pull forth their record that would have anything and show that it's not consistent. Therefore, it must be retracted. Must.
For variances from categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally different in nature. In nature. The nationality versus the nativity. You were conferred a nationality, and everybody believes that it's such a great benefit. I hope you're seeing what it's doing. What a great benefit to tear the family's whole unit apart around the world.
It will prove that they've been stealing from private people. The record will prove theft by conversion.
And that's RICO. Fundamental basis conversion.
Private people that were not in the military. And this is the only people it applies to.
You got to be a private man before you become a private first class.
It's a military health system, like I've been saying. It's all an insurance scheme that then says you have to educate your children so they can operate in commerce and get a job. That job is a fucking military position.
So when a living soul graduates from high school and becomes a young man, he's got to decide whether to pay homage and go back to the Father which art in heaven, or follow in his Father's footsteps in this world and give up that breath of life to remain in personage of man and be treated like an animal instead of a living soul. Again, sick.
Secretary provides an opportunity for a hearing to a student who asserts that he is in compliance with registration requirements and files a written request for a hearing in accordance with paragraph F1, right here.
And that's a hearing for a declassification form 715 or to combat. I'm not part of your war. All of these forms, certainly deceptive, known as commercial forms under the Uniform Commercial Code, known as the Battle of the Forms. I'm not here to battle. I'm here to live life
and learn how to deal with its trials and tribulations, not yours.
Of this section, within the award year for which he was denied Title IV Health and Higher Education Program assistance, or within 30 days following the end of the pay.
Jason asks if we are not of a nationality, then what are we? We are children of the Most High. Jeremiah 1:5 again. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, telling us that no nation can sanction the word of God through their ordinances.
Payment period, whichever is later. It says within the...
And again, the link to the StreamYard panel is pinned, so feel free to click that and come on up. I'd love to have some more voices, opinions, and comments. I know I'm not always right, but I think this is pretty succinct, and I want to know what other people are feeling about this. Is it really pissing you off now that you're finding out the truth? I mean, all you guys that we talk about being that beta cuck corporate male should tell you something here. You know, Wes Watson's a great guy. He's got a great body build, but I have kind of the similar issues with him as Paul does. He's shooting a commercial venue. Come out of her. I think he's a great guy. He's got the right concept. But I think if he got together with somebody more along the lines of myself or Paul, he might get a better concept and help people create better things without the commercial system doing that exact same process. Knowledge, no ledge. Different. Take those two words apart. They are contracted together to believe that it's knowledge, and it's not knowledge, it's no ledge.
The award year. So you can't go back and get awards from prior years, but I could certainly write a written request now for last year if I'd applied and was denied, which I was. I went to go get a set of eyeglasses, and I was denied because of the mask. By a Walmart employee at that. For a doctor who took an oath to the United States under God for good faith, in full faith and credit. And then I can only presume that
I couldn't get him to put a protection order out. I tried, but they were too dumb to even think about it. Because the premise of a protection order is protection orders are given full faith and credit. Then the public accommodation would have been enforced. I'm still working on that. It's a tact, like we were talking on Paul's show. It's tact. I've got to be tactful about it. I've got to be strategic. I haven't found that strategy quite yet. But of course, now it's going to be different now that they don't have the mask mandate. So as soon as I get the money, I'm going to go get me some new glasses. Finally.
he possibly took a Hippocratic oath in his doctorates. An official designed or designated, not appointed, not assigned, but designated by the Secretary, shall conduct any hearing held under paragraph F2 of this section. An official designated by the Secretary. So now we don't have to deal with the Secretary of Selective Service. We can go right back to the Secretary of Social Security Administration again, because that's who the administrative law judges deal with. Conduct on any hearing held under paragraph 2. This hearing, the sole purpose of this hearing is the determination of compliance with registration requirements, which are judicial requirements. Again, post-secondary. The post office is one that regulates the judiciary. Postal Regulatory Commission. They're the ones that administrate all the administrative law judges, and they do that through the judicial discretions, which are accounted for through the Social Security Administration at the state level. That's why that's the judicial record, and the courts hold the criminal record, where they keep the index
which is the fingerprint index and the interstate identification index.
Connected directly to the FBI, of course. That's who holds those records. And specifically, it's the Interstate Identification Index. And when we look at indexing, it's a congressional index for the National Archives through a military index that keeps track of financial indexes through the court's administrations, the court registry investment system. So what you're actually doing is you're investing in a military corporate entity. How wonderful. Such great protections.
FBI,
as they call everybody, sovereign citizens. Suckers.
record, investigations record. They investigate the record. At this hearing, the student retains the burden of proving compliance by credible evidence with the requirements of the Military Selective Service Act. The designated official shall not consider challenges based on constitutional or other grounds to the requirements that a student state and verify, if required, compliance with registration requirements or to those registration requirements themselves. So, that pretty much says that you're not supposed to use their record against them, so you don't. Jeremiah 1 verse 5. I formed the...
So you profit unto the nations. Titus 3:8, affirming the will of God, so that the good works that you do are profitable unto men. And that's PROPHETABL, not profitable PROFITABL. This is the 50 USC 4305 B2, wherein you give a directive for full acquittance and discharge, so that no person shall be held liable in any court by granting or giving the interests to the United States, the principal party of interest.
In the belly before I knew thee, before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee, I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And by the record itself, it is only nations that pose to have militaries. I know of no family, mom, dad, and their heirs that pose to have militaries.
This goes to what's known as the Calvo Doctrine. Now, the Calvo Doctrine poses that a foreigner upon foreign land is not subject to the military. The United States poses their sovereignty through the military branch, and they pose that they have jurisdiction over the family, when that's not true. The family, even an individual man, has what's known as plenipotentiary powers. This is the power to self-govern. But because of the families subjecting themselves to the religion and the public education systems, they become indoctrinated to those. Even the church has manuals that you follow called Bibles, scriptures. And in those scriptures, it says he wrote his word on our hearts. Why do we need the scripture? Shouldn't we be able to know the simplicity of right and wrong? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, as all of the scriptures around the world pose in the many different languages. It's all the same concept.
A military venue is strictly commercial, and commercial venues are strictly military. Any determination of compliance made under this section is final unless reopened by the Secretary and revised on the basis of additional evidence. Additional evidence to the record, not in, on, and for the record. A distinct difference.
So what you're going to do is you're going to give them supplemental facts that can't go into the record. And therefore, that's the subject matter of the declassification form 715. I can't keep putting information in on this record because everything actually needs to be declassified. So it's not a matter of putting additional evidence into the record, but providing additional evidence to show that the record is in error and it must be corrected. That's it. Private viewing only. Equity, not public.
This is the written determination that you make yourself. Just like in 26 U.S.C. 6201, the determination of the taxpayer shall be assessed by the secretary. The assessment isn't done until somebody makes a determination. They have nothing to assess until you determine to enter something into the record.
So yes, let me get this correct here. This is why no. I got the wrong one here. Let me find it. Yeah, there we go. So much of the jurisdiction is based on our claim that we are government agents. And that government agent is by use of the address wherein you put the name of the agent at that financial institution for service of process as a business entity, but you're living there as a resident and working outside of it by going and getting another job. And you're using that street name, which is a municipal origin. The municipality created the name, and then the Postal Service attached a number. So they are the contractors, and they are saying that you are the assigned agent as a resident whose resident presence has been deemed necessary. And that is false. And it's under a trust, which is expressed on the envelope when you put the city, state, and zip. It is a trust. They are involving contract work, and they are saying you are the contract officer under their delegation of authority by use of proprietary information in a real estate investment trust that the Postal Service operates and not the United States. Secret agent man. The secret is you don't know it. They do.
In, on, and for the record. Then they assess that. Now, the secretary shall determine. It's no longer an assessment. Any determination of compliance made under this section is final. So I'm giving the determination, and it's final.
And the record is in error. How do we prove that? The missing element that I didn't submit a handwritten statement of intent. The state can say they certify it all they want, but there is no valid agreement because none of them wrote a handwritten statement of intent either. And they won't. They won't.
And that whole record that they pose against me proves to be summary. So all I have to do is pose that I've posted my declaratory judgment for 2 years now on my worldwide website privately. I have issued a notice internationally. Just did so yesterday morning. Early morning. Pentagon got its notice. And hopefully it went up and down the line, despite how many notices I shotgunned out. I want the world to notice that I've made a determination. I declared it. The court gave its summary judgment. I made my determination based on that summary judgment. And again, like I said, declared it. And now when nobody rebuts it, it becomes a final judgment. And then all I have to do is issue notice to the secretary that final judgment has been determined. Compliance of this under this section is final unless reopened by the secretary. Now, unless it's reopened by the secretary, and the secretary can base that and revise it on additional evidence as opposed to what I've posted, then please do so. You would have to prove that I'm party of that military offense of a nation under the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, which indentures the Treaty of Berne, protecting literary and artistic works, and the law of nations, otherwise known as the principles of the laws of nature. Naturally. Any determination of compliance made under this section is binding only for the purposes of determining eligibility for Title IV higher education program assistance. Guess where they get their authority, folks? 20 of the U.S. Code. That's employee benefits. Selective service under education, and they get their authority from employee benefits and national security. Reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art.
Specimens. That's one I always forget when we talk about specific, special, and species. Specimens and objects of art. Now, these are the national treasures that come from the people, whether they're of the nation or unto the nation.
My. Is that birth registration or reception and arrangement of specimens and objects of art?
Literary and artistic works. It's a colorful document that somebody else created, and it's protected under the Treaty of Berne. It's not mine. It's theirs.
Are they trying to protect their literary work that is false? Are they claiming a literary work based on information abstracted from a specimen and then artistically drawn in another form?
As an order, a military order.
And objects of natural history.
Natural history. The law of nations, otherwise known as the principles of the law of nature. Again, variances from categorical pretreatment standards for fundamental differences in nature.
I hope you guys are paying attention. Natural history. Like I said, law of nations, which would be national history, and would be subjects of national history, as opposed to all objects of natural history. And I hope you learn naturally how to teach your little ones their natural observances so that they can object to the National Selective Service appropriately and righteously. In the meantime, remember, guys, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be doing this. Look up this information. No need to post links. Very short research. Look them up. Do your own continuous research or abstract research above and beyond what's being shown here, so we can all come together with a greater knowledge and enforcement of how this stuff works. So remember, God bless. Have a great day. I'll post my PayPal link. Be sure to hit that and share some love. God bless.
So, when we look at this stuff and we see what it says in plain writing, I don't know that I got the thing about 14-year-old males here. I'll have to look at the videos again and find out where that one's at. But there is mention that the 14-year-old student, male student,
by category, standard category classification as that male student becomes a volunteer in the military before he's even of 18 years of age. So again, if the selective service applies to 18 to 50-year-olds, and that 14 is considered by somebody else in the school, not by mom and dad or himself, to be a volunteer for the military selective service, then what the hell is wrong? You suppose it's up to that 14-year-old child to read all these U.S. codes to find out that he's a volunteer because no one else will tell him? This is why I'm so pissed. 50 years old before I realized all this shit. Nobody in my life told me any of this shit. And it's taken me 7 years to figure it out while everybody else is crying to me, how am I supposed to do it? I don't know yet. All I know is everything I'm doing is correcting the words I'm using, and they are forced to do what is according to the words. They are spells. Use the shit against them. So anybody else want to come up on panel? If not, I'm going to go ahead and shut her down. I certainly appreciate everybody coming. I was hoping for a few more present bodies here because I really think this is important stuff, and that's why I'm doing a review on the selective service video. Everybody keeps asking, how do we get out of it? Well, again, it's because we got ourselves into it. A lot of it, again, by implication, presumption, and assumption because of everybody else and their indoctrination. So again, that's at Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And if you're not going to be a priest unto the children, to him he's going to deny you. And since they can't hear the message or see the message, he's going to have to deny them too. So God bless. You guys have a great day. I want to thank everybody. Crazy Horse Lady, member 800-813, not for to you, peace and grace, everyone. Thank you. King Morpheus, The Truth is Sovereign, Jill, cult member 777, JK, cult member 312, Repairman. Yes, I hope I answered your question there. So much of the jurisdiction is based on our claim. Everything is based on our claim because we don't know, we believe. So again, don't believe me, don't believe your neighbor, don't believe the government, and for crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your research so you learn and you know. Quit believing. Let's see. Harry Nutt says, I've assigned reversionary interest in my estate back to the U.S. upon my death on public record. They refuse to recognize SSA, won't record the record. Treasury won't correct it either. You get a hold of the Adjutant General and the Governor and the Department of State, Bureau of Consular Affairs, and let them know you are an ambassador of God under the humanitarian rights. And you are asserting that, and they have classified you wrong, and you demand under his command of love thy neighbor as thyself, owe no man anything but to love one another, for that is to fulfill the law. And you demand it under that command. So long as you fulfilled that command, you have fulfilled the law. Honor thy father in heaven, the mother in earth, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Owe no man anything. Deuteronomy 15, the Lord's release in 7 years. And it tells us, and that's the very same block of verses, that we are lenders upon the nations. Lenders unto the nations. Again, what are we lending unto the nations? The profit. What kind of profit? We've got to be aware of what's going on here. So anyway, I hope everybody had a good day. God bless. Remember, if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. And I love you, but I don't give a fuck if you love me back. What I care about is that you learn this stuff so you can pass it on to your next generation. Feed a man for a day if you give him a fish. Feed him for a lifetime if you teach him. But if you don't go out with that talent, you're not going to come back with that profit. So if you bury it, don't know what you're going to do about it, but ain't going to help you all your life. So have a good one, guys. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.